Welcome to the CC Reset EdTech Summer Stretch Micro PD series. This asynchronous summer learning series is meant to help educators and leaders learn at their own pace within their own space throughout the summer using more reasonably sized or micro PD chunks. Each episode will be about 30 minutes with the content organized to be easily applicable to implement into your workflow tomorrow. After viewing each episode, be sure to complete the 2-minute reflection feedback survey found in your email blast. I'm Allison Rogers, Instructional Technology Specialist at Clinton County RESA, and I will be your host throughout these Micro PD episodes. So let's dive right into episode number 4, Best Practices for Efficiency in Google Classroom. The purpose of this session is to provide easily applicable tips for making the Google Classroom experience more user-friendly for students and efficient for teachers. So many educators and students have become much more familiar and comfortable with using Google Classroom, especially over this past school year. So my goal with this episode is to highlight helpful tips and time savers to assist with the setup and implementation and just general use of Google Classroom, from color coding to customization. So I hope you find this helpful throughout your Google Classroom journey this school year. Let's start with where you likely left off last school year. Since so many teachers were using Google Classroom, I think it's important to highlight tips for success in managing all those various Google Classrooms as you move from one school year to the next. So let's start with archiving and cleaning up past Google Classrooms. So what I mean by archiving a past Google Classroom, what I mean is you're basically removing it from your visibility on that main screen. You're not permanently deleting the class, but by archiving the class, it makes it a read-only course, which prevents students from turning things in or posting comments in the class. So this really cleans up your Google Classroom clutter, which will then help prepare you for the coming school year when you're starting to create new Google Classrooms. You kind of have a clean slate of just the classes that you would want to see for the coming school year. So if I go into my Google Classroom as the teacher, I can see all of my various classes that I'm the instructor for, and to archive a class, I simply go to the class and click the little 3 dots or the snowman, and I select archive, and it's going to basically explain to me what it's doing. Archiving a class causes it to be archived for all participants. Archived classes can't be modified by teachers or students unless they're restored. This class will move to your archived class. Class files will remain in Google Drive. So again, it's reassuring you that you're not permanently deleting this class, but it is going to sort of stop it from being a live, living course in which, students can turn things in. So if I click archive, then it has removed that course from my sort of homepage of classes for visibility. If I want to find that course again, I go to the main menu and scroll down to archived classes, and then there is the class. If I want to restore that class, again, I click the 3 dots or the snowman, and I can click restore. And then it will tell me that you and your students will be able to interact with the class again, and it'll show in that main menu. And I can click restore, go back to the main menu, and there it is. So you can see how archiving classes might be helpful to sort of clean up the clutter from year to year, especially if you are managing several Google Classrooms at a time. So my first tip when it comes to archiving classes is to only archive them. Don't permanently delete those old classes. You saw that as an option when I archived a class, that I could delete it. So the reason my recommendation is to not permanently delete old classes is that you never know when you might need to document your interactions and communications with students, and you can always view your archived courses if you need to access lesson materials or reuse a post or even verify student records. So I would just suggest to stick with archiving your classes to help clean up that main homepage and hold off on permanently deleting classes for now. My next tip is to be sure to return all student assignments before you archive your classes. So if you use Google Classroom, you probably have a ton of student files in your Google Drive account, right? Because when you create a Google Classroom, it automatically creates that Google Drive folder for that class. So before you archive your classes, I highly recommend returning all the student work, because when a student submits an assignment through Google Classroom, you become the owner of the submitted files, right? And then when you return the file, ownership is transferred back to the student. So it will be a lot easier to keep Drive organized if you return all student work first. Because again, this transfer of ownership of assignments back to the students will prevent your Google Drive filling up with a bunch of old student work. And our next tip helps you find what work needs to be returned. So if you use that to review feature in Classroom, you can instantly find work that needs to be reviewed by you and returned to a student. You can do this by specific class, or you can search for within all of your classes. So I can find this in two different ways. I can be in my homepage and go to the To Review section. I can also go to the main menu and find the To Review here as well. And I can also go into a specific class, select View All for upcoming work. And when I do that, it's going to go into the specific class, and here's listing all of the work that's in progress, right? So it's been turned in but not graded. Right, so this is the To Review section versus the reviewed, which is things that have been returned. So again, I can go to the To Review here, and this will bring up the list of all of my classes, and then I can filter down to a specific course. But if I wanted to go through and see all of my current classes, what needs to be returned to students to clean up my drive, this is the best way to approach that. Next, let's talk about organizing your digital world. With Google Classroom, as I mentioned before, when you create a class, there is automatically a Google Drive folder created associated with that class. And the same goes for a Google Calendar that's associated with that Google Classroom. And then if you have certain notifications set up with a Google Classroom, you can receive email notifications about your various Google Classrooms. So by the end of the year, you can have a lot of sort of clutter within your various Google apps with respect to the Google Classrooms that you manage. So I'm going to show you how to clean up some of those areas. So the first one is Google Calendars. So hiding those old Google Classroom calendars can help you prepare for the coming school year of calendars as you create different Google Classrooms. So you probably see a huge list of calendars that are linked to each of the classes that you teach. So if you take a minute to remove these old calendars so that your calendar list isn't overcrowded, it can help organize and prepare you for the coming school year. And don't worry, you're not deleting the calendar, you're just removing it from your list of calendars. The calendar is still in fact linked to the course in Google Classroom. So here you can see I have a giant list of various Google Classroom calendars that I might want to clean up to prepare for the coming school year. So if I hover over one of the calendars and click the three dots for options, and then I can select Hide from List, it's going to remove it from that list, so it's less clutter, but it's not permanently deleting the calendar. It is still connected to that original Google Classroom. The next area to clean up is your inbox. So you could archive and clean up your inbox by creating a past courses folder or an archived class folder, so then you can move emails directly to that folder. You can also go through and archive lots of messages that just prevent clutter in your inbox. And I think that probably your emails specific to those notifications that you get are probably less important to hold on to versus maintaining that class and not permanently deleting it within Google Classroom. So think about going through your inbox and clearing up anything that maybe is unnecessary to keep, and then adding a folder to organize the things that you do want to maintain. And then the next area to organize is your Google Drive. So just like with Google Calendar, you probably see a huge list of Google Classroom folders that are linked to the classes that you taught last year. So take a minute and reorganize these older folders. I would recommend to not delete the folders or files altogether, because some files might need to be accessed by their people, but what you could do is create a past courses folder or an archived class folder that is specifically meant for old Google Classrooms that you're not currently using, but you don't want to necessarily permanently delete. And then this can help organize just your Google Drive in general year to year. And then what you could also do to prepare for the coming school year is to create a 2021 Google Classroom umbrella folder, like a bigger folder where then you could place the new Google Classroom folders that you create when you create a new Google Classroom, so that they're kind of all in one place and easily accessible. So for example, within my drive, I have created an archived Google Classroom umbrella folder, and this is where all of my old Google Classroom folders live, right? So it's just, they're not scattered around my drive, they're all kind of in this one main folder. And then what I could do is create a new folder, call it 2021 Google Classroom folders, as sort of that bigger umbrella folder, and then every time I create a new Google Classroom this year, I can place that folder in that umbrella folder, so then they all sort of live in that same space and just make it a lot easier for me to find them. My next tip is creating a student exemplar folder. So in addition to an archived courses folder, you could select specific assignments and student work from a Google Classroom folder that's automatically created when you set up a classroom and put them into this new folder called Student Exemplars. It's just a nice way to be able to house your high quality examples of student work year to year, and it helps you just become more organized by having those specific student examples in one place. So for example, I've created this 2021 Student Exemplar folder, and what I could do is go into my archived Google Classes and select a class and a specific assignment that I want to use as an example, and I could just drag that example into the Student Exemplar folder, and it's changing access, but I'm going to go ahead and move it, and then I now have this Student Exemplar example in that folder. What I could also do is make a copy of that assignment as to not change the sharing permissions, and have a copy of it live in my Student Exemplar folder. So next, let's talk about customizing your Google Drive and Google Classroom. So specifically using emojis and color coding, it's really nice to be able to add in these features, specifically since Google Classroom is so text heavy. So adding those emojis or special characters and adding color allows for easier navigation through that. So you've got a couple options. You can use an emoji keyboard Chrome extension, add that to your extension bar in Chrome. Emojipedia, you can search by keyword to find a specific emoji you're looking for, or you can always use the keyboard shortcuts depending upon what the device is that you're using. For Windows, you would hit that Windows button, period, and for Mac, it's Control Command Spacebar. And when you do that, as I mentioned in a previous episode, this little box of emojis will pop up and you can select the one you're looking for and add that right into your Drive or Google Classroom. So let's say I want to add an emoji to my Student Exemplar folder. I can select one of those options. So maybe I go to Emojipedia, and maybe since it's exemplar, I want to search for a light bulb. And I can scroll down and select light bulb, and then scroll down and click the copy button. Go back to my Drive, rename the folder, and I can add it to the front or the back, and click OK. And now I have my emoji added to my Drive. So I could even do this, add a specific emoji to denote each Google Classroom I have. That's another way to organize. And what's nice is when you add an emoji in, it brings it to the top of your Drive list. I could also right click and select change color and customize the color of each of my classroom folders as well. Another way to just help you navigate the potentially very cluttered Google Drive, especially when you're talking about Google Classroom folders within Drive. And in terms of customization within your Google Classroom, you could, create an assignment, and within the directions even, paste in your emoji, right? So you can add in some of those images and just help make the visibility and the visual of whatever instructions you're creating or announcement you're posting a little bit clearer and a little bit less just text, especially since Google Classroom can tend to be text heavy. And the next tip is kind of on that same note. It's going to talk about packaging your Google Classroom assignments so students have everything in one place. So you create an assignment and students don't have to go searching for, specific directions or rubrics or due dates or any other guidelines they might need. It's all encompassed in one location within that assignment. So here's an example of an assignment from a teacher I work with, and they did a nice job of sort of encompassing everything the student would need all in one post. So they add emojis for some of that customization and helping the visual look a little bit cleaner. And each emoji sort of makes sense with what the post is, right? It should take you about an hour to complete, and it has a little hourglass, so kind of makes sense there. Additionally, they talk about due dates and sort of next steps, and then encompasses the slides that they'll need. So this is just a nice clean example of encompassing all those pieces in one place so students don't have to go to different areas. And then this little infographic here is from Shake Up Learning that I think is really powerful. How to package digital assignments. And so it's kind of just this checklist of 10 items that I think might be helpful when you're posting assignments within Google Classroom. So first and foremost, give us each assignment a dedicated number, right? So really focusing on those naming conventions of your assignments that helps keep it clear for both you and the students. Include detailed directions, kind of a no-brainer there. Include student-friendly learning goals, always a good place to incorporate within the assignment, as well as the rubric or how it's going to be assessed. Explain how much class time will be given. Include the due date and time, which is, again, built right in to the Google Classroom setup. Include collaboration guidelines, explain the turn-in process, explain to work on it, what to do if you're finishing early, and then including all attachments and links. So it's kind of just best practice, but also utilizing the things that are automatically built in within Classroom, like the attachments, like the due date and time, etc. Next, let's get into several different shortcuts and time savers as you navigate Google Classroom. One huge time saver is creating a Google Classroom class template. Basically, you can create a class that becomes your template that you can reuse over and over again. So you want to start off by setting up your foundational elements of whatever an ideal Google Classroom would be for you. So this might be by making a copy of an existing class that contains everything you already need, or by starting from scratch and creating a classroom with all of those elements. And then every time you go to make a new Google Classroom, you would make a copy of that class template and then rename it to whatever specific class you're creating. So again, if this was my foundational class that I wanted to make a copy of, I would go to the three dots and select copy, right? And it's making a copy of that class. I can also go up to the little plus sign and create a brand new class. Either way I do this, I want to make sure that I name this class class template or something along the lines of template, right? So then I click create, and then I can add those foundational elements into that course, or if I'm making a copy of it, it will adopt all those things that already exist in that class. So when it's time to make a new class, instead of starting from scratch every time, I would go to that class template page and select copy, and then just make sure I change it to whatever class name I want, and then I know that this copy is going to adopt all of the things from that class template, and then I can go in and fine-tune and alter things that are specific to that class. So it just saves you just a couple steps from having to start from scratch every single time you create a new class. The next tip is about how to customize the Stream tab. So that Stream tab in your Google Classroom is kind of like the communication hub. It's where you likely post announcements and keep students informed. By default, the Stream will also show notifications of new items posted on the Classwork page, which can sometimes seem redundant and sort of clutter up that Stream tab. So if you're using the Classwork page, you can choose a collapsed or expanded view for classwork notifications on the stream page. So then basically you can just hide them from the stream page entirely, and then it doesn't seem so redundant. So for example, in this sample class, you can see that when I post new assignments in the classwork page, it also shows up in the stream page. And if that seems redundant and sort of feels like it clutters up the purpose of your stream tab, what you can do is go up to the little gear icon within your class, and it's basically taking you to settings, where you would scroll down to where it says classwork on the stream, and by default it's going to show condensed notifications. If you like those notifications, you can even select show attachments and details, and it'll give even more specifics about the assignments posted. But if you are looking to have the stream be more for announcements and communications and not where your assignments live, then you can select hide notifications and then save, and then you'll notice that it's those assignments notifications are no longer visible. It's just, you know, class comments and announcements that show up. You can always go back in and change that in the gear icon by just then selecting the show condensed notifications, and always select save anytime you change anything within your settings, so it is reflected in that Google Classroom. The next tip is posting assignments to multiple classes all at once. So if you teach multiple sections of the same course in Google Classroom, you can save time by posting to all of your classes at once. So when you go to create an assignment, you can actually create an assignment and distribute to multiple classes all at the same time. So it's a huge time saver. But one thing to consider, if you do decide to distribute assignments all at once, you will lose the ability of that scheduling feature. So if you're used to assigning an assignment to a class and you want them to have the visibility at a different time or different date, if you're assigning it to one class at a time, that's fine. But if you're assigning something multiple classes all at once, unfortunately that scheduling feature is not available at this time. So how this looks is when I go to create an assignment, up at the top here, it's asking me which class do I want this assignment to go to. So right now I just have the one class selected. And so then you'll see that I have the option to select a specific date and time to assign that. If I want to assign this assignment to multiple classes at once, you can see now that I have 3 classes selected, but no longer do I have the option to select a time in which it becomes visible. Right? I still have the points, due date, topic, all that stuff, but it's now going to be posted when I save it. So if I click assign, it's going to assign that to all 3 classes. And what I can do is I could always save this assignment as a draft and then assign it when I'm ready for all of my classes to view it. So it's just one quick time saver to help you assign the same assignment to multiple classes at once. The next tip is bookmarking the classwork page. So sometimes navigating where you want to go in Google Classroom can be a little bit frustrating because for whatever reason the default view is that stream page, not the actual classwork page. And since the majority of your time you likely spend on that classwork page, I recommend bookmarking it as sort of a quick way to access your classwork page for all of your different classes. So what you can do is navigate to the class that you want to bookmark and then go to the classwork tab, and then you're going to want to bookmark this page in your Chrome. So you can click the little star to bookmark the tab. That's one way to do it. Select add bookmark, and then you can rename it, put it in the bookmarks bar, or select a specific folder. But another nice little quick tip for you to bookmark is, see this little lock symbol? You can just grab that little lock and then drag it down to your bookmarks bar, like wherever you want it on the bar, and then you'll see that it defaults to calling it the classwork for whatever the name of your class is. So if you want to rename that, you can just go up to the bookmark and right click, select edit, and then change the naming conventions, right? So instead of classwork for your course, you could call it, first hour or whatever it is, and then click save. And so what you can do is do this for all of your different sections, right? So you can go and find your different classes, go to the Classwork tab page, drag that little lock, maybe put it right next to first hour, rename it, click save. And so then when you're working throughout your Google Classrooms, you can always just click here to take you directly to the hour, but not just that specific class, but also the Classwork page within that class. So it's a nice little time saver to help you navigate through your various Google Classrooms. So on that same note, the next tip encourages you to share the direct link to the Classwork page. So if you go to the Classwork page of your desired classroom and copy that link at the top of your browser, this link will open up directly to the Classwork page. So what you can do is then paste it in other places, like maybe your class website or in an email or within various other class content and resources. In the same way, you can also copy a link directly to an assignment within Google Classroom and then post it or share it directly within maybe like a class schedule or other parent or student communications. So within my desired class, I can just grab that URL and copy it once it's connected to the Classwork page. But to grab the URL or the link to a direct assignment, what I do is I hover over an assignment and then I click the little three dots and I select copy link. And what that's going to do is let me, if I open up a new tab and I paste that link in there, it's going to take me directly to that specific assignment within that class. So it's nice to be able to, highlight or maybe assist students to go directly to the assignment that you're referencing. And our final tip for today is tagging students in class comments. So if you allow class comments or you have enabled that feature for students to comment on the stream page, you can actually tag students in your responses by adding the plus sign and then their email. So let's say a student posts a question about an assignment or overall a question about class, you can actually tag them in your direct response to their question. And then they will get notifications that you've tagged them if their email is enabled or if they have push notifications using the app on their device. So this functions very similarly to tagging people in comments within Google Docs, for example. So for example, I'm in my Stream tab in my sample class, and I have my sample student has made a comment, and I want to respond to them, and I want to tag them in my response. So I would go down to that comment and start typing whatever it is I want to write. And then to tag them directly in that comment, again, I would type in plus sign and then start typing in their email. And typically it will pop up. And then when I click the little arrow, it's going to post my comments with this tag of that specific student. So everybody in class can see these class comments, but since that specific student asked the question, I wanted to tag them to ensure that they saw my response. So nice way to kind of directly answer questions and highlight and tag specific students. So thanks for joining the CC RESA EdTech Summer Stretch Micro PD series, episode number 4, Best Practices for Efficiency in Google Classroom. Be sure to complete the 2-minute reflection feedback survey found in your email blast. And thank you overall for participating in the CC RESA EdTech Summer Stretch Micro PD series, episodes 1 through 4. I hope you found these shorter Micro PD blasts helpful as you gear up for the coming school year. And if you have any follow-up questions or need additional support, I encourage you to reach out to me. Thank you.